This sounds totally made up until you listen to the police report. In the early 90s, a teenage girl started to see these shadowy figures that would come into a room at night and crawl all around her room and even grab at her legs. At the same time, her health began to rapidly deteriorate, which ultimately led to her death, which doctors never understood. A few days after her death, her sister woke up to a whistling sound and saw a creature crawling around her room with no face. The same night, her mom was ripped out of bed by someone. The father calls the police, who come over, they search the house, they don't find anything, it's all quiet. As they're about to leave, they hear something. Horrifying screams coming out of the bedroom. They run inside, no one's in there, but there are these huge gashes on the wall that were not there before. The police get out of there. In the police report that was filed immediately after this house call, the chief inspector and the 3 officers that were there that night swear they saw and heard the same things as the family, which means the police officially believed that the house was haunted.
This girl did brujeria on one of her exes so that they can get back together. The only reason this story is being shared is as a warning. So this story is actually from the point of view of the friend and not the girl who actually did the brujeria. Also, if you don't know what brujeria is, it's witchcraft. This girl says that when she was in college, she made a friend, and as of that day moving forward, they were inseparable. She says that her friend was in a relationship with a guy and they had been together for 5 years. And after a while, she started noticing that they started arguing a lot, and she admits that the girl's boyfriend was very sensitive. She said how the guy told her friend that he didn't want to come into her life and have it just be negative all the time, and that's why he made the decision of them breaking up. From that point forward, she said that she started noticing how her friend stopped putting makeup, stopped brushing her hair, she stopped dressing up. She was very much going through it. But after a while, things were starting to get better. However, that was also around the time that the girl saw her ex with another woman. Unfortunately, she says that her friend went back to that depressive state again, but this time she saw a bit of anger in her eyes. One day, she said she needed to go to her house because they needed to do a project for college, and she does want to mention that she was always home alone. She was the only child and her parents were always working, so anytime she went over to her house, she was always there alone. She said that everything went well, they did the project and they were even talking, and she noticed that it was getting nighttime, so she started putting her stuff away and she was getting ready to go home. As she's putting her stuff away, she says that her friend said, "Hey, I need to show you something." She showed her some books and admitted to her that she was starting to learn how to do brujeria. She admits that she thought it was a joke. She started laughing and she was just like, "Oh my god, you're crazy," and she left. So after this, a few weeks passed and she says that she gets a phone call from her friend asking if she wants to come over, and of course she said yes. So after college, they both headed over to her friend's house, and once they get there, she says that her friend started telling her what she was doing. She says that her friend started mentioning some dark figures and how she told her that in a few days her ex was gonna get back with her. When her friend was telling her all this, she didn't want to be involved, so she kind of changed the subject, and then after that conversation was over, she's like, "Okay, I have to go home." I'm not gonna lie, I would have told my friend how fucking crazy she sounds. We listen and we don't judge. However, this girl says that after 5 days, she gets a phone call from her friend telling her that her and her ex got back together. Of course, she started hanging around them and she noticed how attentive he was with her, and it was almost like the guy that every girl wished she had. And she says that she was also happy because she hadn't seen her friend this happy since they broke up, a while back. So she says that about 2 months have passed and her friend asked if she wanted to come over to her house, and of course she said yes. But this time they started drinking and they both got very drunk. And while they were drunk, she says, is when her friend admitted to her that she had done brujeria on her boyfriend. Her friend even showed her the work that she had done, and she stayed in shock because again, she never encouraged the conversation. She always ignored it. How did she not know that her friend had done that? What the heck? But she admits that she never thought her friend would do something like that. She didn't think that she would get that desperate. Yet again, she had no reaction except for when she was shocked, but she didn't tell her friend anything and just carried on with another conversation. So at this point, a month had passed and they actually broke up out of nowhere. And this time she noticed how her friend started looking really different. She started looking very tired. And that was when one day her friend came to her and said, "Hey, something is bothering me." Obviously, she asked her friend who was bothering her, but the girl didn't want to tell her. But one day when they were walking towards the girl's house, that's when she got very desperate and was like, "I don't want to go home. There's an entity that's bothering me because of the brujeria that I did." She told her friend that this entity wouldn't leave her alone, that she would follow her everywhere she went, especially when she was home alone. She claimed that the entity would be both a woman one time and then a man one time, and that even while they were in class, there was an empty desk where the entity was sitting there just watching her when she was was walking down the street, she would see the entity sitting on a bench. She says that when the entity would be either a man or a woman, the entity was very pale, the eyes were white. She also tells her that when it would manifest, she would start smelling like a dead animal kind of smell, and that when she would look at the entity would be with its hand held out as if telling her, come with me, or like, you owe me something. The friend said that she was very concerned, and behind her friend's back, she went and talked to her parents about it. She says that the last time she heard from her friend was when the parents took her somewhere to get that entity unattached from her. And after that, she has never talked or seen that friend ever again. Well, she at least did one thing right. She went into her parents, because imagine if she had done nothing again. I'm listening and I'm judging. Sorry. Anyway, don't play around with brujeria. I feel like that shit never works out. Like, if someone doesn't love you, move on. But what do you guys think?
This is why you should always sleep with your lights on. In 1991, a man named Christopher Case was found dead in his bathtub, fully clothed in the fetal position. When police interviewed his best friend Sammy, she told them about a very disturbing phone call she got from him the night before he died. On the call, he told her that the previous night he had woken up to what sounded like whispering coming from underneath his bed. When he went to look, he couldn't move. As he laid helplessly, he watched a black figure pull itself out from underneath his bed. Once it was fully upright, it reached down and began choking him until he passed out. The next morning when he came to, he felt his neck and it was swollen and bruised. And then he saw blood on his hands and he saw that there were deep, uniform incisions on each of his fingertips. As he's saying all this to Sammy and telling her how scared he is to go to bed that night, he suddenly stops and he says, "I hear whispering outside my room." Then the phone went dead.
Then put both his feet in the jar. Then he crouched down and stuffed in his legs. I watched in awe as he squeezed his entire body into it, until it was completely inside the jar. His face was visible, but was completely smushed up against the glass, and I could finally see his face. He looked to be some balding middle-aged guy living in a drafty old apartment. Then, with his one free arm, he reached over and grabbed a lid and somehow managed to put it on top of himself, closing the jar with his entire body sealed inside. I couldn't tell if the pressure was distorting his face or if he was just crazy, but he smiled at me very disturbingly, like he was waiting for me to applaud. I didn't have any words. I couldn't comprehend how a grown man had fit himself into something so small.
Well, what do you think?
That's very cool, but can you get out?
Can I get out? Of course I can get out. What?
That's when he tried to push the lid off, but as soon as I saw it not move, the man's smile started to slowly vanish from his face. I knew something was wrong. He kept trying to push himself up to get the lid off his back, but he wasn't able to budge it. He was too tightly packed in there to maneuver, and he couldn't get any leverage from the position he was in. All of a sudden, panic was written all over him. His face turned red and puffy, and he frantically tried to move whatever he could, but all of it barely amounted to anything more than rattling his cage. Quickly, it started to seem as though he was having trouble breathing, too.
Help me! I can't move, I'm stuck! Oh God, I'm stuck! Help!
I don't know what to do!
Get me out of here, please!
But I don't know where you are! Tell me where you are and I'll call the cops! After the reality had set in that he was completely stuck, the panic had turned into utter despair. He was sobbing incoherently, completely incapable of forming words. Tears and snot and drool streaming from his face and down inside the wall of the jar.
What is your location? Tell me!
I'm in my apartment. Please come find me. Please. Come. Me.
What's your address? Please, that's all I need to know and you'll be okay! Damn it, man, focus!
No! It only took me a second to realize what I had done. I became so panicked and frustrated that I accidentally pressed the skip button when I banged my fist on the table, causing me and the stranger to be disconnected forever. I'll never be able to properly describe that sinking feeling I felt in that moment, knowing I had just doomed that man to his unusual fate of slowly suffocating, trapped, alone, unable to move. My hands were shaking uncontrollably. I didn't think there was anything I could do. If I called the police, they wouldn't be able to find him since I never heard his address. I didn't record any of it, and there's no way of knowing where somebody is from Omegle. Without a better idea, I swore to never go back on there. I tried to forget that I was ever on Omegle in the first place. I actually got drunk for the first time that night, in hopes that I could go to bed and sleep without much trouble. But God knows, even after all these years, there's nothing that will get the image of that trapped man in a jar out of my head. It's been haunting me for so long. Every day I wonder what happened to him, if anybody ever came to rescue him. or if those moments he spent with me over the internet were his last moments with anyone. These days, I remember one man, one jar as a friend.
If you have one of these 5 names, then I'm sorry for you. I hope you don't have one of these names. But if you know someone who does, you should share this video with them as a warning. It has indeed been proven that these names attract spirits 10 times more than usual, both good and very bad ones. In 5th place, we have the name Karen, which attracts good spirits. The 4th name that gets a lot of spiritual visits is Noah. In 3rd place, there's the name Ethan, which is visited by many spirits. In 2nd place, the name Emma is one of the worst names, perhaps for bringing a spirit into one's home. Before revealing the top spot, comment your name, like, and share this video. The name that brings the most spirits is Kevin. There are 5 other names that are not good for welcoming spirits. If there are enough comments and likes, maybe I could save you. But for now, it's really not certain. Good luck.
It's April 2020 as I write this, stuck in quarantine. I live in a duplex house. It's 1 story, but it's divided into 2 sections. Each side has 2 bedrooms and a kitchen, with each having its own front door. Inside the house, there's a door separating the 2 sections, and it's locked by the other side. The landlord, Jose, lives on the other side, and he has the lock switch on his side of the door. Obviously, that's not exactly a situation I've been entirely comfortable with, so I took it upon myself to install some camera I bought on Amazon. It connects to my phone to alert me when motion is detected, and I aimed it right at that door. But did I ever expect to actually get any kind of notification from that app? No. That's why when I got a notification about movement on the camera, I freaked out. I opened the app and saw in the very laggy, low frame rate video that the door connecting the 2 sides of the house was open. I was literally sitting in my car in a parking lot, heart racing, waiting. A few minutes later, I saw Jose walking through the doorway, and a few seconds later, shutting the door behind him. I was supposed to go shopping, but instead I raced home to check my apartment, but as far as I could tell, nothing was touched. I didn't know whether to confront him or see if it persisted, but the curiosity just ate away at me that night. I knocked on his front door and told him about my camera, and that I knew he entered my apartment. He admitted it right away, but he had a reason. He said he smelt a burning smell that he thought was coming from my side of the house, and he knew I wasn't home, so he had to check if I left the oven on. Given that I couldn't find anything stolen, I had to just say, okay, thanks. I mean, realistically, it was a viable reason for him to come in, right? Still, that night while I was in bed, I wasn't happy about him just coming into my side of the house. I mean, that's against the law, isn't it? Given that we're both always home now makes the situation a little more tense. A few days later, I was up really late on a Zoom call with my friends when I got that dreaded notification on my phone that there was movement. I closed my laptop for like a second to go outside my room. All of my lights were off out there, obviously. It was like 3 a.m. I was in the living room, and I saw Jose standing in the corner. He had something in his hand that I couldn't see, but he was surely looking at me. I could only see him because the light from my bedroom came out to the living room slightly. He started walking to me like a zombie. I told him to chill out as I backed away into my room. When I saw him still approaching me with this lifeless posture, I slammed the door shut and locked it. He started to pound on the door with some blunt object and tried the doorknob. I yelled at him to stop before I called the police. And just like that, he stopped, and a few seconds later, I heard the door separating the apartments slam shut. I peeped into the outside, and he appeared to be gone. I got the police on the phone and had them come to the house. We got Jose to come to my side of the house. He claimed he didn't remember a thing, and as the 4 of us watched the footage on my phone of him entering my side of the apartment, he had this look of fear and remorse. That's when he claimed he has a sleepwalking problem that's gotten worse recently, and he's on a bunch of medications. The police asked me if I wanted to press charges. I looked at Jose and said no. However, as soon as the police left, I barricaded that door with my dresser and started looking for new apartments. I haven't seen Jose since, and I'm not staying here much longer. I don't think I believe his sleepwalking story. It truly seemed he was trying to hurt me that night.
The dark story about
Hard-boiled toe V10.
Hard-boiled toe V10 was a TikToker in 2021. She posted a video about her dog named Cracker, but many people were disturbed about the dog. I'll show the clip.
I've been getting a lot of questions about my dog Cracker. He's half Cocker Spaniel and Australian Shepherd. I rescued him. He's from Japan. Do you want a treat? Yeah? You want a treat?
As you can see, it does not look like a dog. Looks like a demon. After that video, she made another one. In the video, it said he's gonna K1L me. I'll show the clip. She then disappeared from TikTok and never came back.
What do you think about this?
The Ghost Bride of Changi Beach is a true scary story from Singapore. Changi Beach is calm and peaceful during the day, but at night, things change. People say a ghost bride haunts the beach wearing a white wedding dress. The story is about a young woman who was supposed to marry the love of her life, but the night before her wedding, something terrible happened. Her groom disappeared, and people said he ran away with another woman. Heartbroken and full of shame, the bride went to Changi Beach in her wedding dress. Under the moonlight, she walked into the sea and never came back. Now, some people say her ghost still walks the beach. They hear soft crying near the water, even when no one is there. Others see a figure in a white dress walking along the shore, looking down as if searching for someone. Locals have a warning. If you see her, don't follow her into the sea. This is a story from Singapore. Comment with your country, and I'll share a story from there.
A few years back, I decided to do something I said I'd never do. I got up at 4 in the morning to get in line for Black Friday. I didn't tell my family about it. I wanted it to be a surprise. Imagining my kids' faces light up when they got to see the Christmas tree we decorated on Thanksgiving night already surrounded by presents. I snuck out and made my way to Target to get a good spot in line. The doors opened at 6 a.m. and everybody poured in. I made my way down the path I planned out in my head, as my wife and kids had already made a list of everything they wanted. I bought everything and paid an extra few bucks to get everything professionally wrapped. Since I suck at wrapping presents, I got out of the store just before 7 o'clock. Unfortunately, that's where things got derailed. As I was loading the presents into the trunk, a man came up and offered to help. He seemed genuine for the most part, but I wasn't fooled for a second. However, he wouldn't take no for an answer. He put his hand on top of the pile of presents, telling me it was too big of a task for one person to handle. I told him to back off, as I knew he was just trying to slip away with one of my gifts. The man became defensive, and then right before my eyes, he started taking items out of the cart and stacking them into the trunk of my car. I couldn't believe the nerve. Without thinking, I shoved him back into the parked car behind him. He immediately came back and shoved me even harder, sending me reeling into a guy who was walking by. He stumbled and managed to catch himself, then looked at us with a weird judgmental expression, then told us to act like adults and headed into the store. When I looked back at the first guy, he had a present in his hands and was turning around to run off. I caught up to him in a few strides and yanked him back by the shirt so I could sock him in the face. I threw my momentum into him too, making him crash into the ground. He dropped the box, which tumbled across the pavement. I went to pick it up, then looked back at the guy. He was sitting up against a car, nursing the left side of his face. He stared daggers at me, but I laughed and told him he was lucky that present wasn't fragile. Then I returned to my car and finished loading it up. The loser didn't even get to his feet. He wouldn't take his eyes off me though, which freaked me out. I could feel the seething rage, like he was holding himself back from stabbing me when my back was turned. And yet, I got in my car and drove off, thinking that was the end of it. I even looked forward to telling my kids the story of how Dad saved Christmas. But then, half a mile down the road, I realized something. I hadn't taken my wallet out of my back pocket to set it in the cup holder when I sat down. I hadn't thought to do it because it wasn't there. It was gone. Suddenly, it clicked. That whole altercation was just a ruse to distract me so that guy who I got shoved into could pickpocket me. I cursed up a storm in anger. I had $80 in cash, my credit and debit cards, and my driver's license in that wallet. I immediately pulled over and canceled all my cards so they couldn't drain my accounts in the store. But there was nothing I could do about my ID. I thought back to that face of the man I punched. The unbridled rage in his eyes made me think there was no way he wasn't going to do something with the knowledge of my address. I went home and tried to put on a brave face, but I took my wife aside and told her what happened. She said we should call the police, but I didn't know how that would help, so I didn't bother. That night, I went to bed late, and if I hadn't gotten up so early, I don't think I would have slept at all. At some point, I woke up to a rustling sound. After listening for a moment, my heart sank. That sound was the sound of the presents being unwrapped. I got up and started making my way down the hall quietly, hoping it was just one of my kids being impatient. When I rounded the corner, I saw a man crouched under the tree, surrounded by open gifts and shreds of wrapping paper. It was the same man who lifted my wallet. Then, out of nowhere, I got punched in the face. I staggered back, nearly falling over, but I got caught by the arm and pulled face to face with the guy ahead. He was still furious, but now there was a huge bruise around one eye. He said only a few words to me, but I'll never forget them. "You're lucky we didn't go to your kid's bedroom and unwrap them." Then, he threw another right hook in my face and threw me to the ground. By the time I was able to regain my bearings, both men were gone. I ran through the house to make sure they weren't still there, but I found nobody. Everyone was still asleep even. I called the police, and they searched the house while I explained everything. All they found was a smashed window in the garage. After the cops left, I thought about what to do next. I ended up loading all the presents into my car for the night. The next day, I went to the mall and had them rewrapped, and that's when I noticed one of the presents was missing, the same one the thief tried to steal initially. It occurred to me that if I had just let him get away with it in the first place, I wouldn't have put my family in danger. They were just petty thieves after all, but I pissed them off and made things worse.
We need to talk about the smiling dog. The smiling dog is a demonic creature that looks like a dog but has human teeth. Photos of this creature were sent to people all over the world, and once a photo was seen, the smile dog would enter the viewer's dreams. And in the dream, you'll feel a need to ask the creature one question: what do you want? Then the smile dog will always reply with "spread the word." After that, you'll have 3 days to grant the smile dog's wishes. And if you don't send any videos or photos of the smile dog to someone else, the photo you received will start to deform, showing you a much more disturbing version of the smile dog that some people think is its true form. Some people have even said the smile dog's nightmares are so bad that its victims avoid sleeping altogether, weakening their mind and making them even more vulnerable till the smile dog comes out of their dreams and into their reality to further torment them. So send this video to someone else to spread the word of the smile dog. Imagine you're a patient in a hospital and you accidentally step into an elevator that's out of order. But as the doors open, you realize this elevator took you to the wrong floor. In fact, it seems like you're not even in the hospital anymore. You step out into the dark hallway in front of you trying to figure out where you are. But suddenly the elevator doors shut behind you, and out of the darkness, a surgery bed rolls into view. As you hear loud gasping and croaking noises coming from whatever is lying in that surgery bed, it gets up and begins coming towards you. Panicking, you rush back into the elevator, frantically pressing every floor to try and escape. But no matter which button you press, the elevator still takes you back to the same dark hallway, with this person or creature getting closer and closer every time. This short film is called The Last Stop, and it really felt like watching a nightmare unfold. It was also quite scary considering there's literally zero dialogue. So definitely check this one out. And
Fall had just started, and around here the weather becomes cool and breezy, and in my opinion, it's the best type of weather. It's definitely my favorite season, and last year it was no different. Around early October, I went out and bought some Halloween decorations before work one day, planning to set them up outside once I got home. Due to a coworker calling off though, I had to stay late, and didn't get out until 7. I drove home as quickly as I could, and started getting to work. It was kind of dark out, but with my outdoor lights on, it wasn't too bad. I started with setting up the orange lights on my bushes, and as I did, some guy came around the side of my house. He startled me, just walking up without saying a word. I found it kinda rude, so I made sure to tell him off. "Hey, you're on my property. Can you leave?" The guy looked at me with a straight face and said, "Sure thing," and started wandering down to the road. He looked 40, with short brown hair, and the way he was acting was almost like he was homeless or something. He had no care in the world, and seemed to have no direction. I continued with setting up the lights, but I couldn't help but notice that the man never really left. He was on the other side of the road, wandering around, and several times I even caught him looking over at me. It was really creepy, and I ended up just going inside after finishing the lights. I had no idea who this guy was, or what he was doing by my house. I tried to tell myself it was just some harmless homeless man with no sense of boundaries, and went on with my night. I made dinner and went up to my room to watch some TV in bed. As I was upstairs, I heard something below me. It sounded like something slowly sliding on the ground. I paused the TV, but I couldn't hear it anymore. On any normal day, I probably wouldn't even check it out, but having seen that guy earlier, I just had a weird feeling, so I got up and walked downstairs. Strangely, I noticed right away that all the lights were off, which I could have sworn I didn't turn off yet. I walked a little further and into the hallway, flicking on the overhead light, then stopping to listen again. It was still quiet, however, there was a low ambient noise. It was wind howling through the rooms. I moved up to the back of the house, where I could now see the sliding back door was wide open. I felt my stomach tighten, knowing that's exactly what I heard from upstairs. Someone slowly opening the back door. At this point, I wasn't sure if I should just run out of the house, or run back upstairs to get my phone. The answer is probably obvious now, but in the moment, it was hard to think straight. I wasn't even sure if someone had actually entered my home or not. I felt my adrenaline pumping as I called out, "Hello? Who's there?" I walked up to the door and looked outside quickly, not seeing anyone. I then turned back around, and somehow I managed to spot the faintest outline of a person standing in the other room, completely covered by darkness. I let out a literal gasp when I saw them, and by doing that, I think I unintentionally showed them that their cover was blown, because immediately after, he came running at me. I only saw him in the light for a fraction of a second before running out the door, but I was sure it was the same man I saw outside. As I ran through my backyard, I could hear his footsteps catching up behind me. I ran up to the closest house and started banging on the door, screaming for help. Luckily, they opened up somewhat quickly, and as I entered their home, the man stood in their front yard and just stared me down. We called the cops, but the guy had run off. It's pretty clear that while I was at work that day, the man had broken the lock on my door. Then, during the night, he tried to sneak inside my home. Had I not heard the door opening, or not noticed him hiding in the dark, who knows what he would have done that night.